Week 11 officially came to a close last night. No more undefeated teams in the NFL remain as the Kansas City Chiefs gear up for another road battle, this time in the NFC. The Chiefs are going to head to Carolina to take on the 3-7 Panthers, who sit just 2 spots back away from dead last in the conference. We're going to discuss how the Super Bowl champs plan to regroup and what Brett Veach has been up to, making another roster grab. What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Happy Tuesday. I'm Hayley Lewis, and this is Chiefs News Daily. Kansas City welcomes another player by way of the Patriots. I guess one man's trash is another man's treasure. We're going to break down the addition of Tyquan Thornton and more Chiefs news now. But first, like and subscribe right here on the KCSN YouTube channel, and let's get into it. On Monday afternoon, the Chiefs made another add to their roster. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport tweeted out, quote, sources. Former Patriots wide receiver Tyquan Thornton is signing with the Chiefs practice squad. A fresh start for the former second-round pick who was waived by the Patriots on Saturday. Now, our own Josh Briscoe explains a little bit more. He says Thornton, a speedy wide receiver who ran a 4.28-second 40-yard dash at the 2022 NFL Combine, never reached his potential in New England. Thornton was released by the Patriots on November 16th, giving him a chance at a change of scenery to revive his NFL career. In 28 games with the Patriots, Thornton recorded 39 catches for 385 yards and 2 touchdowns, with the majority of that production coming in his rookie season. Thornton, at number 50 overall, was drafted shortly before the Chiefs selected wide receiver Sky Moore at number 54 overall in the 2022 NFL Draft. Pittsburgh selected George Pickens at number 52, while Indianapolis took Alec Pierce at number 53. Now, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Thornton had interest from more than a dozen teams, and the Saints were in the mix as well. Of course, he ended up choosing the defending champs. The former Baylor Bear never really developed into the threat that the Patriots had hoped for, according to ESPN's Mike Reese. Thornton has not played since Week 8 against the New York Jets, where he logged 20 yards on 2 receptions. The Chiefs, who just earlier this year, lost their receiver Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice to injuries, continue to bolster up. Kansas City also signed veteran Juju Smith-Schuster shortly before the start of the season. He also came from the Patriots and traded for DeAndre Hopkins last month. So as a normal Tuesday rolls here in the Kingdom, the Chiefs do not talk. So we're going to hear from head coach Andy Reid and quarterback Patrick Mahomes tomorrow. In the meantime, I bring you Matt Miller, ESPN NFL draft analyst and insider, on the show to discuss the addition of Thornton and the remainder of the Chiefs' schedule. Matt, break it down. What does this mean? I know a lot of fans probably are speculating, okay, this bolsters up the wide receiver room while they've had some injuries there, but realistically, he's signed to the practice squad.
He is, and I think my first reaction was, oh my gosh, this is such a Brett Veach move. Someone who's going to take a formerly highly drafted player and, like you said, almost try to rehabilitate their career. I've had this conversation with Brett years ago about, there are players at one point in time, you or another team thought highly enough of them to draft them in the first, second, third round. When you can get them for pennies on the dollar, we've seen this a lot with mid-season trades where the Chiefs send like a conditional 7th round pick for someone who was an early round draft pick. Those have not oftentimes panned out, but I think it's worth the investment, especially when you have such a good coaching staff with Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, Steve Spagnuolo, Andy Heck. You have people who are proven in their ability to develop players. So that was my first reaction was, okay, this is a Brett Veach special. Someone who, but here's where I want to caution people, okay? Thornton was drafted in the 2nd round by the New England Patriots in the 2022 NFL Draft. He was my number 267th ranked player in that draft. And I went back this morning and looked at, because I'm wrong. There are times I'm like an outlier on a player, but I went and looked at my peers. I looked at Daniel Jeremiah. I looked at Mel Kiper Jr. I looked at Todd McShay. No one had this player in the top 100. So when you hear, hey, this guy was a 2nd round pick. Yes, but he should not have been, which is why 2 years later, he's suddenly available because the Patriots 2022 draft is one of the worst in recent history. And Thornton being overdrafted by about 200 selections is a big part of the reason why.
Dang. Well, we know he's a speedster, so he does bring that to the table, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, bringing up some reasons maybe why he didn't necessarily pan out with the Patriots. But why do you see, or why did you draft or put him in your mock draft maybe so low as compared to the Patriots who put him in the top 50?
I mean, he does have great speed. He's a very linear player in terms of, it's going to be go routes. He tracked the ball well, but he had no route tree to speak of. And Baylor at this point in time was under this strategy of they were just going to be faster than everyone. And it worked. Baylor was decent there for a stretch of time around here because it was just like a track team. And Thornton was a big part of that. And so he was really drafted as someone who could be developed. You could develop his route tree. But, I think he was undersized to ever be somebody that was going to be an X receiver. Like, he is a slot only type player where, the lack of strength isn't going to be an issue. The lack of route running, you thought maybe wasn't going to be an issue. But he was, I hate to say just a deep threat in college, but he was kind of just a deep threat in college. And so that just never developed, to where he became that, okay, now you got to, start to become a run after catch guy and underneath routes. That was never part of his game. And maybe some of that blame goes to New England. They've not had steady quarterback play until this year. So maybe he didn't, get the looks and the reps he needed to develop, which again is why you take this flyer to Kansas City. But he's somebody that he's a complete project that needs his game almost worked from the ground up.
So maybe put us in the perspective or the mindset of Brett Veach. Then why go out and grab this guy? Is this going to be a guy who gets elevated from the practice squad on game day, has one incredible down the field catch, and then collects his Super Bowl ring and then goes back to go? How exactly do you, or what exactly do you think Brett Veach was thinking when he was like, all right, this is an easy guy to claim off waivers?
Honestly, I look at it as you have a wide receiver room that has been, the top has been taken off with Rashee Rice getting injured. That was huge. Xavier Worthy, he's got to figure out where the out of bounds is, and he had a great start last week. You could see they wanted to feature him, but I look at it as outside of Worthy, Mecole has really just become almost a gadget player again. Juju is, he's almost like another tight end out there. He doesn't have speed anymore in his game. So I see it as like, hey, let's take a shot on this guy. It cost us basically nothing to do it. And maybe there's something hidden underneath, what he didn't do in New England the last few years. And to his credit, the Patriots have drafted a lot of wide receivers. They've thrown a lot of capital at that position. They've added guys in free agency. So he did just kind of get lost on a depth chart that has changed under a new staff. So I think it's worth it to say, let's bet on the physical attributes. And maybe all we need him to do is be another vertical stretch guy to try to get some of these safeties off of Travis Kelce, or maybe we just need him to be somebody that can help us on special teams. As he was a good kick and punt returner in college. Maybe he can be another, asset that they have in the return game. But I think numbers are just so important this time of year, as you have a team that had a bye week 6. You've got, I just talked about this with Tucker on 21 Questions the other day. You have 3 games in 10 days coming up. So I think numbers are super important, and Thornton might only have one trick, but it's pretty damn good because he will at least cause defenses to think about him when he starts to get a vertical stretch going.
Well, hey, and if you get to learn from anyone, you get to learn from the Super Bowl caliber team at the back-to-back champs and get to play, with the leader being head coach Andy Reid. Let me talk to you real quickly about the rest of the slate for Kansas City. You mentioned it, a 10-day span, 3 games. They've been hit with injuries quick, early on in the season. So maybe a lot of those players could potentially come back as they get closer to the playoffs. But they pick up their first loss to the Buffalo Bills, a great team, arguably, who beat them in every phase of the game, but gave them a lot to think about. For maybe a few who are hitting the panic button or curious how the Chiefs are going to be able to bounce back, what do you see for the remainder of the Kansas City Chiefs with what they have left in this schedule and, kind of some of those bumps that they've had to go through in adversity? Now, at least the pressure of the undefeated season's off.
Hayley, you have won 3 Super Bowls and not one time did you go undefeated. So I think they're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine in Kansas City. As long as 15 and the Walrus are out there, You're going to be A-okay. But I think you don't want the pressure of being 15-0, 16-0, and having to make the decision of, do we rest Travis Kelce? Do we rest Chris Jones? Do we rest Patrick Mahomes? But you're like, nope, that would be best for our roster, but we got to chase this kind of meaningless regular season mark. I think it's a better situation for the next 2 months to not have that kind of monkey on your back of, oh my God, we got to chase this undefeated season, because it doesn't help. So kind of get that loss out of the way. I think it's great that you drop to Buffalo instead of Denver or instead of Carolina, because now you are going to have a little extra vinegar in your piss when you see them in the playoffs to say, hey, you know what? You might be our only loss this year. And then you can have kind of that artificial motivation of let's beat the one team that took that perfect season from us instead of, oh my God, we got to make sure we don't overlook Bryce Young or we don't overlook the Raiders. I think it's much better. And certainly with the Chargers game coming up soon and them having such limited rest, I think now you're allowed to think about your season on a week in, week out basis instead of, we're all human. You can't help but look ahead when you're undefeated. It's like having a no-hitter. You're going to think about it. It's going to be. So I think this is the best thing for them, honestly. And I do think it's the best thing for them to lose to the Bills because that does give you, we've seen this team, they love the bulletin board material. Now you have it because Buffalo beat you once again in the regular season. And that will, I think, if they need any extra help in the postseason, this gives them that motivation.
Alrighty, folks, that does it for another episode of Chiefs News Daily. As always, we'll be back again tomorrow. But in the meantime, like and subscribe right here on the KCSN YouTube channel. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will see you back here on Wednesday.